Welcome to Keep Hustling, where we are going past the why to get to the how. I'm your host, the always hustling Aaron Gordon, aka NY Risk Advisor, aka Mr. #Keep Hustling. In this podcast, we will be diving deep into the professional and personal successes of our guests to find out how they hustled through the most difficult times in their life and their development to achieve the success they've gotten to today. So buckle up for what hopes to be an amazing ride. Let's get to it. Welcome to Keep Hustling with my guest, Samantha Lacher. Samantha, it is extra special to have you here.
I'm so excited to be here with you today.
For those who don't know, Samantha is my first cousin. And when this airs, she still will be my first relative of mine that has agreed to come on the podcast. So thank you for taking the leap and always supporting me in everything I do.
This feels like a high pressure conversation with that.
Well, I can almost guarantee that there will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 11 listeners. That's the first cousin, clan, parents, and spouses. I think I can almost guarantee that we'll get 11 listeners on this one. So I appreciate you being here.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Let's try not to make fun of me and my childhood too much.
There goes all my punchlines, Aaron.
There we go. Boom. Samantha has been putting up with me since literally the day I was born, but I'm sure we'll get into that. So take us back. What do we need to know about your upbringing? Obviously, I know a lot about that, but there was a time before me that kind of shaped where you are today, because I think your professional story, which I hope we get into, is super interesting. So kind of just give us a little high view of your history.
Yeah. So I think I've always just been encouraged to have a pretty intensive work ethic, and this idea that you just continue to hustle, right? Like you just have to do it. And that's just part of who I have always been brought up to be, working hard and focusing and concentrating and always striving for the next thing. And I think the other piece of it also has been just this strong sense of loyalty and kind of commitment. I have been at the same company with my boss for almost my whole life since I was a child. No, in all seriousness, I've been working for my boss for 17 years now, which is almost unheard of. And I think that kind of like always looking for the next thing and that sense of loyalty that I have always had since I was a kid really has transferred through.
I think, and I want to, we are definitely going to go back, but I want to jump in on something that you said because I was hoping that you would actually segue to that quickly. I think it's even more impressive that you stayed with the same boss and kind of at the same company, especially because your company went through a transition.
Yeah.
So not only did you were at Missy and Associates, did I say that correctly?
Yes.
And now it's Finn Partners. What was your mindset with that? Obviously, I understand why I would assume the person who took the leap of faith on you or gave you your first job out of college, or did you even intern there when you were in college?
Let's come back to that because the first time I interviewed there, I actually did not get the internship. I had to come back.
Really?
Second time, yeah.
Okay, so I want to get back to that, but the question I was asking is, and then the firm sold, right, or merged with another firm,
Yeah.
And yet you still felt that sense of loyalty. So what is that? Take me into that mindset.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think, so I stayed with MFA for a long time for a few reasons. One, obviously, is I love the people that I work with. I think we're not a family business, but we may as well be at this point. The core of us in the leadership first at MFA and now in our practice area at Finn we've been together since I was a college senior. These are the people I spend every day with. And so they really are kind of an extension of my family. And so when we were acquired by Finn, it's like a weird thing. You don't know what's on the other side, right? You know what you're told, you know what they say it's going to be, but you don't really know what you're going to get. I think that the alignment between what MFA and what Missy have always stood for and what Peter and Finn Partners stand for is very similar. Finn Partners, also though large, was founded as an extension of a family business and really operates as a family business and is very focused on cultivating a place where people want to work. And so that all was what the expectation was. And I think then we got there, we figured a lot of new growth opportunities that at a smaller company don't always, you reach a certain point at a small business and either the company has to grow drastically or you kind of max out. And so the opportunity to join something larger also was a good impetus to stay.
You can plead the fifth on this. Were you part of that decision?
No, I wasn't. I think, aware of the conversations and definitely part of, some of the discussion, but ultimately the decision was Missy's.
But it wasn't shocking to you that there was some sort of acquisition or merger. As you said, at a certain point when you're in a small business, everybody, first of all, you have that family feeling, but also it's like
Right.
everybody realizes that the height is only where the height can be. And so I guess if you're having the conversations about taking the next step, you have to form a partnership somewhere, either get acquired or merge or something like that.
Right.
So it wasn't like a total shock to the system. Everyone's running to try to figure out, where tomorrow is going to be. And you also mentioned that you have your own division of Finn. Is that what you said?
Yeah. So the way it works at Finn is there, when we came in, there were some departments that were already established, and then some instances where acquired businesses come in and kind of operate as their own teams and units. So we came in and spent about the first 2.5 years really as our own. You come in and you're like your own. We were our own like little group, and then we fused with the New York consumer practice and became the consumer lifestyle and sports group, which I think must have been like spring of 2020 or 2021.
Great time to be integrating with a team.
Yeah, exactly. And then that really included the expansion of our sports practice with the addition of a staffer who also, interesting loyalty story, had actually worked for Missy for about 12 days when he was 23. And then
12 days, you said?
I don't actually know the exact number, but Missy had hired him when MFA was like 4 people. And he worked there maybe a few months. And all of a sudden she said, like, something feels up, like, what's going on? And he said, my dream job that I had applied for when I was applying for this job came through, and it's at the NBA. And she said, you got to take it. She said, you got to go. The NBA is not going to call you back. And so he went and then spent his whole career there, and they kept in touch. And he came back and is really at the forefront, the spearheading our sports group.
So I have to go back to something you said. You said that you didn't get the internship and you came back. So tell us that story.
Yeah. I don't know. It was a lousy interview, I guess.
So you were in college at the time?
I was in college the summer before my junior year. And I'd had a personal connection, a personal intro to Missy. And I went in for my interview, and I met with 2 women who are, I don't know, probably like account supervisor level. So maybe like 4 to 6 years older than I was. And then I kept following up and they didn't hire me. and fast forward to the next summer and, ran into Missy, and she's like, what happened? I thought you wanted to intern for me. I'm like, yeah, I did want to, but the people who you sent me to interview it didn't like me. And so
that's interesting. So she asked you.
Yeah.
Did you think if she had not asked you what had happened, that you would have gone back?
No, I think she opened the door to have another conversation when she kind of was like, where'd you go? I thought you wanted to spend your summer with us. And the funniest part about this is one of those people I still work with. And so every so often, I like when she asked for something, I'm like, remember when you didn't want to hire me?
Remember when I was a little kid and you were a little kid too? But I think that there's something there about finding a mentor.
Yeah.
And I think it also gets back to your loyalty, and that is that the boss wanted you to work there.
Yeah, we always laugh. Missy finds people like, of course, some people who come into the group come in through like more typical recruiting channels and such. But Missy has always hired based on like who she meets that she feels like in her heart and gut are going to be the right fit. She always says like you can train for skills anytime, but you can't train for fit and culture. And so we have quite a few of us who she has like stumbled on in various.
But I feel like that's a double-edged sword, because I feel like sometimes she's like, I feel like this is going to work, and then maybe it doesn't.
It almost never doesn't. She's got like a good witchy sense.
Interesting.
Missy's going to watch your podcast, Aaron.
100%. I would love to have her, but it's like, but I guess you're right. If you're hiring for culture and you believe that you can teach skills, which I agree with, right? I mean, unless it's a super specialized field, if the culture is there and the person has the desire to learn the skill, I mean, let's be honest, neither what you do nor what I do, certainly not what I do, is rocket science. So it's about the culture and the passion and the hustle. And then you kind of teach the skills around it, I feel like.
Yeah, totally.
Has the culture changed going from being a smaller business to a part of a larger business?
I don't really think so too much. I think that the 2 companies did have really similar cultures from the get-go, which really helped with our integration. And I think the way we operate now with our kind of core team of 25 is pretty similar to how we operated before. Obviously now a little bit more spread out as the world has changed and we're not all physically together all the time, but we find a way to make it work.
So you interned.
Mm-hmm.
I want to get back to this. So what was it like when you showed up in the office and saw those two people? Like, meaning, oh, hey, or did Missy tell them to call you, or did you reach back out to those same people and said, hey, funny story, I ran into your boss and she basically said you have to hire me?
Yeah, right. So one of them wasn't there anymore. So in that year, transition had gone somewhere else. So
we could just blame them. We can just totally.
You're right, exactly. Blame her. But you know what? I work. It's like a pretty small industry, so it's not that our paths haven't crossed since then. And interestingly, like we've used her to support like with freelance work since then. It is a really small world. I actually cannot remember what the chain of events was. I'm sure it went something like you have to hire her.
Right. Like, oh, and you sent her an email. But I just think it's amazing that like we started by saying, and you started by saying that you were brought up on loyalty and obviously being a member of your family. I know that. But, and people who don't know, you're talking to probably one of the greatest soccer players in the history of the New Rochelle soccer. I don't know what to call it, little league, but soccer league. Wow. And also a lifetime clarinet player, which also takes a certain level of dedication and,
I only played soccer till like 7th grade, right?
Okay.
Clarinet, yeah. Okay, I'll take that one.
KHP, secret time. I'm a couple years younger than Samantha, and Thanksgiving usually included soccer in the backyard underneath the apple tree. Petrified when she would kick the ball in my direction. Petrified. So I don't care if it was 7th grade or whatever. I don't care if you were 7. So, but you began with loyalty, but I feel like there's something in your story that relates to someone else's loyalty to you that maybe sparked that or solidified that, which has now led to a 17. I feel like it's got to be longer than 17 years. I'm not going into your age, but it's got to be. I feel like it's got to be longer than 17 years.
Yeah, I think 17 years, 17 and a half years full time plus the internship before.
Plus the internship. So that's a long time to be part of.
Yeah, it is.
Not a family business, right? If we take family business
it's truly almost half my life, like no exaggeration.
Half of your life through a big transition, through major life events.
Yeah.
And in a world that's filled with a culture of find the next thing, search the next thing, don't get committed to anything. There is a better job for you. There is a job that's more hip. There is a job that will pay you a couple more bucks or whatever it is. And yet I have to believe that it was her loyalty or her desire to have you work there and the culture that led you to not look elsewhere, even during a transition.
Yeah.
Not to go back to that point again and again, but it's just something, there's got to be something there.
I think, look, like the first go round, it was almost like I just had to prove them wrong. It's like a little bit at the beginning, for sure.
Another trait we're just going to put that one on the side, but yeah.
So I think a little bit of that at the beginning, like, of course I can do this. Why do you think I can't do this? Like, I just have to show you I can do it, just like for myself and for you, them, everybody. But I think it's like, working at a small, like entrepreneurial business, some of it is that like the job is what you make of it. And I think that's really that has always been the perk and something that has always been articulated to me. Like, you want to work on a particular piece of business, go get it. You want to work with a particular type of client, go find them. Like, great. Well, happy to have them.
What shocks me in our generation are the amount of people that leave a company and come back because they realize that the grass is not really greener on this side. And, you talk about proving things wrong. Like it would take a lot for me to like bring someone back that left me, not to go out of the industry, someone who wants to try something else to follow the path I'm playing with. But if like you leave my company for the competition and you realize that like, we have something special here, or you're a better fit or whatever, and you left for a couple bucks. It just, in my industry, it shocks me how many people come back. And I just wish more people would have that loyalty from the beginning, because I feel like that will save you a lot of pain leaving a company that you love and then having a miserable experience to 100%. Come back to that.
100%.
So I want to dig a little more into your career. I like to know about when people reflect on their careers, and yours has been with one company, but really spanned a lot of different types of business. What has been the most pivotal moment for you in your success?
So when I was maybe like 4.5 to 5 years into work, I guess it was about 4 years into work, and we'd been working with a client. It was a pretty was the biggest client I was working on at that time. And I was a pretty recently newlywed. I think I'd been married maybe like, I don't know, maybe like 4 months, like very, very new.
Fun wedding, by the way. Good times.
I'm
Good
glad you're
times.
And then I was called into a meeting and they said, like, oh, we're going to help this client. We're going to, they're going through some staff transitions. They have some open positions. We're going to kind of input you into their in-house team. And you're going to travel every week for 3 to 4 days. Every week, you're going to leave on Sunday so you can be there Monday and Tuesday, back either Tuesday night or Wednesday. And it'll last, like they're hiring. So maybe like 8 weeks, something like that. So 8 weeks turned into like, I don't know, maybe 6 months of doing this every single week. And which was awesome. I learned a ton. I have obviously never worked in-house short of that stint. Was working in more of a like traditional marketing role, a little bit different from the regular like ongoing PR work I was doing. So I learned a ton, was managing ad buys and proofing ad copy and sitting in internal like in-house meetings and all that sort of thing. But what was really pivotal actually was that my day-to-day work didn't change on the agency side. So I was still carrying like all my regular agency work, but I only had half the week to do it. And I think it was kind of like this eye-opening, like, okay, I'm gonna have to figure out how to leave things on the to-do list. Because until that point, like I worked around the clock all the time. I just was always, I needed to like get the next thing off the to-do list. And when I was effectively working 2 jobs in the amount of time of one job, like the amount of hours in a day, that just was not going to work. And so that became like a real moment for me to figure out how to like organize my to-do list. I think fact number 1, but also to be able to say like, okay, I'm not going to be able to finish everything on this list every single day, or even most days. I'm going to have to figure out that it's okay to leave at the end of the day, that it's okay to like shut the computer and just some things are going to have to wait until tomorrow. And that's going to have to be fine.
Do you think that was between you and yourself, or also as it related to?
No, 100% me and myself.
But did you get to the point where you had to be also comfortable saying that to the rest of your team or to your boss at the time?
No, I think there was never any expectation that I was going to work around the clock. That was my own nonsense.
Interesting.
Oh, yeah. My own nonsense. I think it has always been like you just get the job done. But I think when you work in a client service industry, it sometimes feels like the job is never done. Even if the job is perfectly done for that day, there's always something else you can do.
I agree with you 100%. You know, I'm in a service business too.
Yeah.
And I feel that it's something I'm really not good at, but it's interesting because it's a different kind of to-do list that you have to develop. When you first start or before you got that, everything had urgency and everything was urgent, right? So everything just had to get done. But then you realize, I also think that people give clients a bad rap. I find that most clients are okay with, unless it's an emergency, you getting back to them tomorrow.
Yeah, I think that the world has changed a lot also in the last 4 years, and there's a lot more grace for that now. I think people are much more conscious of when they are responding to things. I have had clients where I know that they are great night workers. And so I know that if I need something from them, if I send it to them at 8 p.m., I will get an answer at 8 p.m. If I send it to them at 8 in the morning, maybe I'll get a response, so like the kinds of people you're working with and for and that sort of thing. And I think that some of it is also like a self-perpetuating cycle, right? Like you start working on something for someone who is on their computer at 9:00 and then they answer and then you answer and then they answer. And then suddenly it's 3 hours and you're sitting on the couch with your computer on your lap. And so that time frame like really kind of forced me to not do that.
I think also, as you talk about what's happened in the last 4 years, I think that when people started working from home, they realized that if they didn't make that demarcation, then they would always be working.
Yeah.
Meaning when you went to your office and occasionally worked from home, fine. But you could literally never get out of your chair if you're at home. Like literally just never get dressed, never get out of your chair. And so I feel like if you create that, it's interesting. There was a woman who we work with, a legendary figure in the insurance industry, who we work with at one of the insurance companies at a certain point, and she was one of these people who never really wanted to be a manager. So she just did the same job for 50 years and it was awesome. And when we started working with her, she started working on our account. We got a call from her manager. He's like, listen, Louise is great. She's a legend. And she's probably person who's the second smartest in the industry after my mom, of course. But just know that she turns the lights on in the office. So she works from 3 a.m.
Oh,
to
God.
like 10 a.m. or like noon. So just start silencing your phone even if you don't at night, because your phone you're gonna get, if she has 20 things to respond to from the insurance company side to you, you're gonna get a bunch of emails from her in the middle of the night, and you're gonna think it's insane the first time, and then you're gonna get it again and again. So I feel like those kind of things also force us to look at things differently.
Yeah, I agree with having like the demarcation of space and the like getting up from your desk and leaving to do whatever. I definitely agree with that. But I mean, I could get up from this chair and go take my computer and sit somewhere else just as easily as I brought the computer home from my office and sat on the couch.
100%. 100%. What was it like when you left that in-house job and went back to like full-time?
Gosh, my job felt so easy for a little while. I felt like, wow, like, like I have so much time to do the same amount of work. I can get through so much stuff, like get through so many things.
So what do you think has led you, other than loyalty, to keep hustling for the same goal and the same boss for so long? Like, I'm just fascinated by that. You're the second person that has been on this podcast that has had only one job out of college for 15 plus years. Everybody else, not even close.
And it was not your brother.
It was not my brother. You were the first relative. If he comes on, we'll have to change the ending. But yes, it was not my brother. But by the way, there are 3 people in our family. We are 5 first cousins. 3 of us have been in the same position from college to where we are today. And
interestingly, all 3 for family businesses.
All 3 for family business. Very interesting. Actually, you know what's interesting about that? That's a great point, because the ones that didn't work for family businesses are the ones that have not stayed in the same job.
Right. So a couple of things. I think the first piece I'll touch on is I love being on the agency side, right? Because every day is different. I think it's probably similar to what you feel a little bit, and what I think is very different about being on the agency side versus being in-house somewhere. I have a lot of clients. They are not all in the same industry. I might be working on a nonprofit for kids in 1 hour of the day, and then working on a destination in the Caribbean the next hour, and then working on a destination in Canada the hour after that, and then working on a museum the hour after that. So I've got a lot of diversity in the portfolio, which keeps things fresh a lot. So that's piece number 1. I also think the ability, as I was talking about earlier, to be able to really like go after things that I'm excited about and to work on them also helps with a lot of that longevity. And also, like when you're in a family business, after a few years, like you're part of the family, which does make it kind of hard to go.
And by the way, it also makes it easier to fail. You mentioned a couple times what it's like to go after something with that entrepreneurial passion, but you also have to realize that those things are not always going to work. And I feel like in a family type environment, when there's not just a matrix of, oh, you try this X number of dollars in whatever spend or X number of hours spent and it didn't work. Therefore, on the spreadsheet, you're somewhere here, you're somewhere lower than whatever in the deliverables. I feel like when you're in that entrepreneurial family business, everybody wants to see it grow. So therefore, success is good and failure's not okay all the time. But like the same way that someone would let their sibling or child fail, you kind of can jump into that.
It's funny. We had someone in my office used to work part-time. Well, someone in the family was connected to the business, was also a pilot by training and worked as a pilot. And so on his desk, he had a plaque that said failure is not an option. And we used to laugh that it like really stressed people out. When you're a pilot, failure is not an option.
Right.
When you work in most other industries, failure is all right once in a while.
Right. Failure shouldn't be consistent.
Right. But it's like an interesting mentality of like working in a space where truly failure is not an option. And there certainly are industries where that is the case. And, to your point, you're not going to be failing all the time. I think on the entrepreneurial side of things, like even when I'm training people in my group about like kind of increasing their hustle and networking their connections and that sort of thing, like we always say, like it, especially like for cold outreach, it takes a lot of notes to get any response back. And then if you get a response back, it takes a lot of responses back to generate a lead. And then once you get the leads, it's still not every lead turns into a win.
But it's so sick when one of those work out, but it's so awesome when one of those work out.
Yeah.
There's nothing like it. But what I will say is I I've never met the person who said failure is not an option, but not to defend the failure is not an option mentality. But for me, to be the philosophical keep hustling guy, if you view every failure as an opportunity to inspire your hustle and to continue hustling, then failure is not an option because failure doesn't really exist.
Yeah, I think there's an interesting connection between preparedness too and opportunity, and the idea that, half of the battle is like figuring out what the formula is, right? And kind of once you know the formula, it certainly helps.
And then you can learn from that quote unquote failure. I thought the formula included this variable, or I put too much weight on this variable, and I realized that in my industry or whatever, I should focus more on something else.
And you know what? I also think that sometimes, like, when you're going after something and it doesn't work, and this isn't the case in every industry, but in my line of work, like if we're going after an account and we don't get it, like we like to ask why. Like, what can we do better next time? Was it something missing? Was it, what was better in the other proposal than ours?
Or was it that you went with your nephew and therefore we would never get
it? Exactly.
So that's also valuable.
You had no shot from the get-go. You knew who you were going to hire.
100%. Gosh, this is so much fun. This is, if nothing else, and my friend Scott Howell, the co-host of the Insurance Guide podcast, always says that he hopes that people's children listen to this, not for the actual content of tearing it up about, personal stories, but like one of the great things about the Keep Hustling podcast is I get to speak to people like you who, I've known and loved my entire life. My first cousin, obviously. But I really hope that our children one day listen to this and especially your children hear your awesome kids, hear about the loyalty and the drive and the hustle and the grind, because as parents, I think that there's nothing more than we would actually want our children to do than be loyal and hustle and find something that they're passionate about. That may take, right? It might not have been the first job, but whenever you find that thing, just to go after it. So thanks for being here.
Funny anecdote. My kids had pajama day at school last week, right? It's holidays. Everyone wears their holiday pajamas to school. My husband, we're sitting at dinner, looks at my kids, says, how come I can't have pajama day? So my kids are like, my daughter doesn't know what to say. She's little. My son looks at him and says, well, because you're a lawyer.
Yes.
So your office, you can't wear pajamas. And then he looks at me totally deadpan and he goes, you could probably have pajama day. Your office is different. You could just ask Missy. She probably lets you wear your
100%. You know what? 100%. And, that's the daughter of a lawyer and the spouse of a lawyer, but like whatever. We have a closing tradition on the Keep Hustling podcast where we ask our guests to leave us with their favorite all-time or current inspirational, motivational quote. And so I turn the floor over to you and the quote and why, but what it means to you.
Okay. So I kind of like the Babe Ruth quote that yesterday's home runs don't win today's games. I feel like that's a good one.
Love that.
Yeah.
So, and what does that mean to your hustle?
Well, it's like you win one, you still got to go after another one tomorrow, right?
Still got to go after another.
And also, I think in an industry where, like, my job is to get press for clients, right, and to help them with their visibility. And I think it is the idea that you get like a great cover, right? The algorithms change. Next month, someone else is on the cover. Like, you can't rest on your laurels. You gotta keep at it all the time.
It's actually crazy because I'm a big Gary Vee guy. As you could probably tell, like, I mean, there are a couple people that I'm into. He's one of my latest, even though sometimes he and I, we have a love-hate relationship. He doesn't know that I have a love-hate relationship with him, like, whatever. But one of the things that I really appreciate most about him, and he mentioned it, I saw a piece of content last week about it, and I've been following because I really believe that he lives by this, and that is he tries so many things. Everybody sees his successes. When we talk about algorithms or success in the PR industry, like, people don't realize that he literally tries things that stink. Now he has his level of flopping and my level of flopping are two totally different things, but he always says that the ability to realize that yesterday's success is not necessarily going to mean today's success is something incredible.
Well, so. And I actually think there's like a Steve Jobs quote too, kind of like that was like, if you look at instant successes, you realize they actually took a really long time.
Yes, 100%. Overnight success was brewed for many years.
Yeah, exactly. Overnight success wasn't actually overnight.
Samantha, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
This was a lot of fun. This has been another episode of Keep Hustling. And remember, do well by doing good and always keep hustling. All right, hustlers, that brings us to the end of another fantastic episode. Thank you for listening. The listeners are the most important part of this show. If you like what you heard, please leave us a review wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Your feedback means the world to us and helps us reach more listeners. Plus, be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. We have some amazing guests and topics lined up for you, and we don't want you to miss out. And finally, if you have any suggestions, comments, or even just want to say hello, please feel free to reach out to us on all social media platforms. We are Keep Hustling Pod on Instagram, X, Facebook, and LinkedIn. We would love to hear from you to continue the conversation. Thanks again for tuning in and supporting our podcast. We truly appreciate each and every one of you. Until next time, stay curious, stay hungry, and keep hustling.